G'day everyone. Wanted to talk to you about the new Panasonic S1 and the S1R due to the fact it now has been officially announced. So I wanted to go through a couple of the specs with you and just to see what your opinion is about this camera, whether it interests you or whether you think it doesn't interest you at all. But there's a couple of worrying factors about this camera which I'm going to talk about at the end, and there's even a couple of worrying factors for Sony as well, which I'll talk about. But let's first have a look at the size comparison. If you want to know the size of this camera, say compared to the Sony A7 III, this will give you an idea roughly of the different size, and you can see the Panasonic is way larger. Now that can be a good thing. A lot of people do want larger cameras because they like the ergonomics that gives. So it is a great thing if you have something that has a larger field, particularly if you have larger hands. And that's what a lot of people do want. I personally don't mind the size of the Sony, but a lot of people are after the larger bodies. And you can see right through here, if we look at the back, you can see the sort of comparison. The top, I'm a little bit disappointed that they went and used the old LED sort of display there. They could have gone sort of the way Canon and everyone has the new cameras, where it's a much more modern type of display up the top. But again, you can see it's a much better grip, so you are going to have a much better feeling when you hold this camera. If we look from the front, you can see here how much larger this camera actually is. Just to glance quickly through here, I just wanted to show you this little dialog box. Let me just move this so I can get it a bit more in for you, and then I'll have to move it when we go to the next slide. But you can see if we look at the S1 and the S1R, so the S1 has 24 megapixels roughly. The S1R has 47. ISO, you can see there, is ISO 100 to 51. The S1R is ISO 100 to 25,600. And they both do 4K 30 as well. That's really all I wanted to sort of show you on that side, because I'm going to talk about this more from a video perspective as well. I think the S1 overall seems to be the better camera, but I'm going to talk about that shortly as well. If we go over to here, one of the interesting things about this is talking about the 4K mode for both of these cameras. So it says both cameras can shoot 4K at up to 60 frames per second, but I believe that is going to be an extra price you're going to have to pay to use this full on later on, because vlog isn't included, and that's going to be a paid upgrade. Also, I think if you're going to shoot some of the higher bit depths, it's also going to be a paid upgrade as well. I'm not sure reading this whether the 4K 60 is a paid upgrade. I don't think it is. It might be though, I'm not sure, but I know there's a paid upgrade on this. But it looks like if you want to get the best out of the S1, apparently the S1 has the best video, but if you want to shoot 4K 60, there's a 1.5 times crop that is involved with shooting that. So that doesn't really excite me that much at all, because basically you're then becoming an APS-C camera, so that doesn't really interest me at all. So that's a real shame. The other thing too, it's saying that it will do 1080 at 180 frames per second, so it's similar to the Sony A7 III and the GH5, but I believe that it won't autofocus at 180 frames per second, so you have to be in manual focus if you're going to do that, which again is a little bit of a disappointment. Particularly seeing you can see that Sony will do up to 240 frames per second. The S1 can handle 30 frames per second 4K with no cropping and with full pixel readout. However, you'll have to settle for APS-C mode when shooting 4K 60 on that model. And like I said, that is a real disappointment. If you look at the S1R, you can shoot up to 4K 60 with no cropping. So you don't have to go into 4K mode. But the problem is then they're introducing line skipping, so the quality is going to suffer a little bit. It's not going to be as sharp as getting full pixel readout like these Sony cameras do, for instance. So that's a bit of a disappointment as well. The other thing too, if you look down here, it says the S1R is limited to 8-bit video, both internally and externally, and always will be. However, the S1 can handle Vlog and 10-bit video thanks to the sensor's superior noise and color handling. You can also shoot 420 10-bit video internally and 422 10-bit via the HDMI port. And they're saying that they promise that Eventually, you'll be able to shoot 422 10-bit video internally via firmware update like the GH5 can. Unfortunately, the cameras won't get ProRes RAW recording, a feature that offers much higher video quality and recently came to the Nikon Z cameras. So that's interesting as well. Now, before I sort of sum up and give a review about what I think about these cameras, let's talk about the lenses, for instance, as well. At the moment, the camera only comes with the 24-105 available at launch. This is an f4 lens. It's a 77mm and it's 1,299 pounds. Now, this is pounds, so obviously you'd have to look at the US dollars, but they're not cheap. The Lumix Pro 70-200mm f4 lens is also a 77mm diameter lens, and that's 1,749 pounds as well. Again, you're going to have to look at the US dollars, but again, for an f4 lens, they're not cheap at all. The only fast lens that is announced at this stage, and you can't get it at this stage, is this one, which is the 51.4. Again, incredibly expensive lens for a 50mm lens. You're talking there at 2,299 British pounds as well. I believe it's somewhere up around $3,000. I'm not sure US. Again, that is ridiculous if you're talking about a 50mm lens that is only a 1.4 aperture. I think that's nuts, to be honest, if you're looking at the price of these lenses. So a few things that I wanted to discuss with you about this. I do believe, and I've seen some reviews this morning that show it, the focusing is going to be nowhere near as good as what, say, Sony have offered, because it's got phase detection. Contrast detection does do like an initial focus and it will pulse because it sort of looks behind the object and then it will move back and then go in again. So in certain scenarios, you're going to get pulsing. Now, it may not have shown much at this stage because everyone's using the f4 lenses and more is in focus. But when you're starting to get to the fast glass, like if you're using the 51.4 or even something faster than that, you probably are going to notice pulsing when you get the bokeh in the background. That's going to happen because of the way contrast detection works. And I don't believe that Panasonic are going to get around that problem. So you're going to have to use manual focusing if focus is critical and you don't want that pulsing in the background. Like I said, I've already seen it in certain reviews this morning. So that's one downside of this. The crop is also not good. If you're dealing with shooting 4K 60 and then you're being forced to use a 1.5 times crop, well then again you might as well shoot with an APS-C camera, so that also doesn't interest me at all, and it's a real shame about that as well. There are some great features about it though. You do have a full HDMI port, which is so much better than what Sony are offering with that micro one or the tiny HDMI port that always falls out. So that's a great feature. It also has the dual card slots, wake up Sony and Canon, and that's also a great thing as well. There is a real worry though, and there's also a real worry for Canon too, because for Sony. Panasonic have put a time limit on this. Now, I think it was with the S1 you can shoot for 30 minutes, and the S1R is 15 minutes if you're shooting with the 4K 60. So there's a real time limit on that, and there is also a warning about overheating. So if there's a warning about overheating, you can guarantee that the camera is going to overheat. So that is also a real worry. Now, what worries me about this for Sony particularly, they're having overheating in a big body. This is a real warning call for Sony, and this may be why they haven't released the A7S III at this stage, due to the fact that if this camera can't do it with this big body, and I know the Panasonics have been amazing. If you look at the GH5, being able to run 4K 60 in the GH5 all day, that was with obviously the smaller sensor though, that it may not be possible to run these things for really long periods at 4K 60 in full frame. So that's really interesting in itself, and that may be why Sony have held back on their A7S III. So I'd love to know what you think about this. So there's a few things that worry me about this camera. The cost particularly is very, very expensive for what they're offering, I believe. I think looking at that release, I don't think Sony's got anything to worry about, due to the fact of what you'd have to pay to get, say, this camera and a really good lens like that 50mm. It is ridiculous in the price that they're asking for this camera. It's way over, really, what they should be asking. And I think that's a real downfall with this. The focus, I believe, will be a hindrance. and it's only a matter of time until reviewers get it in their hands, real reviewers that aren't, you know, paid by anyone, and the full reviews will come out, and you're going to see pulsing in this video. And just wait for that. It will show when you put fast glass on. It's contrast detection. You can't get over that. And the overheating, obviously, too, is a problem, and the crop. Let me know what you think in the comment box down below. Love to know your opinions. Just thought I'd post a quick video about my thoughts now that it has been officially announced. If you do want to order it, look, I'm going to put the links down below because obviously it will support the channel as well. And I'll see you all again soon for the next video. Bye for now.